He lied to the CIA to their faces and got paid thousands for it. His own brother, if he even existed, sold lies to America disguised as military secrets. And when it all started to fall apart, he made a move that even shook the KGB. What is the Soviet engineer hiding? The one who pretended to be a spy just to fool the real spies. Why did it take the Americans 13 years to realize that their top agent might have been a phantom? And is it true that one mistake could have cost him a bullet? In this video, you'll see the most elaborate spy game of the Cold War, full of betrayal, forged reports, intercepted broadcasts, and a ghost train capable of wiping England off the map. But the most important part is the ending. In the final minutes, you'll find out what the CIA paid 300,000 rubles for and who they were really afraid of. Watch until the last second, because in this story, the lie turned out to be scarier than the truth. Late 1960s. The United States had gained a critical advantage in the arms race, surpassing the Soviet Union in the precision of strategic nuclear missiles. Soviet military installations now lived under constant threat. To preserve their ability to strike back in case of war, they needed to deceive American targeting systems. In January 1969, the Council of Ministers approved a classified resolution for the creation of a combat railway missile complex, an entire regiment of intercontinental ballistic missiles, complete with command post, hidden inside what appeared to be an ordinary freight train. Within 3 minutes, this train could unleash a barrage capable of erasing England from the map. One salvo, one phantom train. Disguised as cargo trains, these missile complexes would constantly traverse the country's railways. For the Americans, identifying which of hundreds of trains concealed T-23 missiles with a range of 10,000 kilometers would be practically impossible. The railway missile complex became America's nightmare. U.S. intelligence desperately sought someone who could penetrate the secrets of this ghost train, this train number 0, as it was conditionally designated on Soviet railways. That's when military engineer Viktor Buterin entered CIA's field of vision. He fit their recruitment profile perfectly. But there was something the Americans didn't know about the methods Soviet intelligence used to lure their prey. Viktor Buterin worked in Perm at a factory producing components for combat missile engines. He possessed valuable information. Additionally, American intelligence knew that his relative, surnamed Kolesnikov, held a high position in the Ministry of Railways and had access to classified information across a broad spectrum. Military equipment, troop transport compositions, army arsenals, testing grounds. The ministry leadership had to know about nuclear train testing, future routes, and deployment points. By his position, Kolesnikov belonged to this circle of informed individuals. In other words, both Buterin and his relative could become exceptionally valuable CIA agents. The classic spy image from adventure novels, a coat with raised collar, dark glasses, a hat, a newspaper with a hole for secret observation, bore little resemblance to reality. CIA Deputy Resident Frank Smith, who came to meet Buterin at the cinema, blended seamlessly among ordinary Soviet citizens. Their contact lasted no more than 2 minutes. After exchanging passwords, the American discreetly passed a note to Buterin containing CIA instructions for future communication methods. First, Buterin had to leave a mark, draw a chalk line on a wall at a predetermined Moscow location. This signaled his readiness to collect a prepared container. The dead drop was located near a telephone booth, and at the specified time, he retrieved this cash. Inside the waterproof paper package were money, invisible ink supplies, and postcards with Moscow views, supposedly written by foreign tourists. These were actually prepared letters from real Americans, Germans, and Englishmen, with invisible ink containing intelligence reports. But why was Butyrin so ready to fulfill all assignments? Because the CIA possessed truly devastating, compromising material on him and his high-ranking relative from the Ministry of Railways. According to this data, both had worked for German intelligence services during World War II. Now, exposure threatened catastrophic consequences. Moscow, November 1969. Major General Grigory Grigorenko becomes first deputy chief of KGB counterintelligence. From September 1970, he would lead the second main directorate for 13 years. The period of Grigorenko's leadership is called the Golden Decade of Counterintelligence. Born in 1918, a participant in the Great Patriotic War, he joined state security organs in 1942. The operation wasn't accidentally given the code name Operation Riddle 2. It was essentially a continuation of the massive game that Smersh counterintelligence had played against Germany during World War II. Back then, one of its leaders was Captain of State Security Grigory Grigorenko, and the main character remained the same: Viktor Buterin. During the war, Buterin had been captured by fascists and agreed to collaborate with German intelligence. He was sent back to Soviet territory as an Abwehr agent. But Buterin immediately reported his recruitment to Soviet counterintelligence. In summer 1943, Smersh decided to use him in a radio game against the Germans, called Operation Riddle. The scenario was well rehearsed. A captured Abwehr agent with a radio was turned, then began transmitting skillfully prepared disinformation to German intelligence. Buterin told the Germans that his relative Kolesnikov held a responsible position in the People's Commissariat of Railways and possessed vital strategic information. The Germans verified such a person indeed worked in the commissariat. In late 1943, Buterin reported to the Germans that his relative agreed to supply information but demanded an American passport and a large sum in foreign currency first. In spring 1944, Buterin transmitted a supposedly secret plan of Soviet military transportation for the next 3 months. The plan indicated that the Red Army's main forces were concentrating on the southern section of the Soviet-German front, where they would soon deliver a decisive blow. In reality, this was strategic disinformation. On June 23, 1944, the Soviet Army launched a powerful offensive on the central section of the front, Operation Bagration. The offensive caught Germany completely off guard. Within months, Army Group Center was utterly destroyed. The road to Europe opened for the Red Army. Operation Riddle played no small part in this victory. The Germans never learned that Buterin was actually a Soviet intelligence officer. 1970. Viktor Buterin transmitted his first report to the CIA. He confirmed that his relative Kolesnikov had risen to a responsible position in the Ministry of Railways during this time, and described his work in Perm and the secrecy regime there. All of this was a mixture of truth and disinformation. Disinformation never consists of pure lies. It's mixed with truthful information. Preparing disinformation materials, especially technical ones, requires extreme care. They couldn't afford to give away secrets, but they also couldn't serve obvious lies. Many details of Operation Riddle 2 remain classified. How KGB came to Buterin. According to one version, this too was part of General Grigorenko's masterful plan. Grigorenko had a talent for calculating 10, 20, maybe 100 moves ahead. Counterintelligence needed to buy time for engineers and designers working on the combat railway missile complex. Therefore, they decided to present American intelligence with an agent and transmit useful disinformation through him, while simultaneously discovering CIA connections and methods in the Soviet Union. But the method by which Victor Buterin was led to the Americans remains one of the operation's mysteries. There are thousands of variations. You can choose whichever seems most plausible. According to one version, the CIA managed to reach Victor Buterin using the archive of Reinhard Gehlen, Wehrmacht Lieutenant General. During World War II, Gehlen commanded intelligence on the Eastern Front, managing a massive data array collected by German intelligence services. On May 22, 1945, Gehlen surrendered to American forces. He possessed crucial information in his archives, and together with his assistant, beginning in April 1945, he microfilmed everything most valuable. Gehlen offered U.S. counterintelligence the creation of a new German intelligence service that would work against the Soviet Union using old, proven agents. After all, what difference did it make which flag to serve under? At first glance, Buterin had compelling reasons to cooperate with U.S. intelligence services. The threat of exposure constantly hung over him. He indicated his desire to leave the Soviet Union, but first wanted to earn money for his future life abroad by selling CIA classified information to which he had access. Interestingly, Buterin's first reports began reaching Washington almost simultaneously with the start of work on creating the Soviet ghost train. Was this a coincidence? The train was being developed by the Southern Design Bureau in Dnepropetrovsk. Designer Vladimir Utkin faced an incredibly complex task. A missile with launch installation weighing over 100 tons had to be placed in a standard-sized railway car and disguised as an ordinary train, indistinguishable from above. The United States had also begun work on nuclear trains. Any information about the Soviet railway missile complex's development represented colossal interest to the Americans. KGB counterintelligence tried to take advantage of this, supplying them with a mixture of disinformation and real intelligence. Leading American analysts down the wrong path was one of Operation Riddle 2's tasks, especially since Victor Buterin's communication channel with the CIA soon became permanent. During these covert operations, the Americans provided him with a camera and a radio receiver tuned to a specific frequency on which the intelligence center broadcast. Most often, coded messages for Buterin came from radio centers in Munich or Frankfurt. A man or woman would broadcast, usually in German, groups of numbers. If reception was good in Moscow, it meant there was another agent somewhere with whom they maintained radio contact. The Moscow CIA residency at that time numbered no more than 10 to 15 people, and they spent a significant portion of their efforts on him. Before meetings, sometimes up to 10 hours were spent on reconnaissance. The CIA didn't know that all their employees' efforts were wasted work. This too was a goal of Operation Riddle 2. In counterintelligence language, this was called diversion. By 1974, the KGB noticed one alarming moment. In their messages, the Americans increasingly asked Buterin to clarify circumstances under which he obtained information. Questions about his past also became more frequent. At Lubyanka, this was interpreted as signs of growing distrust of the agent. Perhaps the CIA had figured out the KGB's game. By mid-70s, work on creating the Soviet train number 0 was proceeding at full speed, but completion was still far off. The railway infrastructure also needed modernization. You could disguise the railway missile complex, but it was very heavy, and such roads weren't everywhere. At minimum, concrete sleepers were needed. Wooden ones wouldn't support it. Railway reconstruction couldn't help but arouse foreign intelligence suspicions. The ghost train needed to be hidden with the same disinformation. But what specific messages did Buterin and Kolesnikov transmit to the Americans? This is such delicate material that no intelligence service will fully reveal how, when, and what. According to some data, in one report they provided the name of a closed Siberian city where work on missiles for the nuclear train allegedly took place. This way, CIA attention was diverted from Dnipropetrovsk, and American intelligence scattered resources trying to penetrate the well-protected Siberian city. In 1975, the CIA indeed suspected their agent of double-dealing. During Operation Riddle, a career German intelligence officer dropped into Soviet territory to contact Viktor Butyrin had been arrested and sentenced to firing squad. But by circumstance, this person ended up in a prisoner of war camp. In 1955, when the Soviet Union granted amnesty to convicted Germans, he returned to West Germany and got a job with West German intelligence. In 1975, CIA officers discovered information in archives that had fallen into their hands that he had been connected to Butyrin and decided to question him. That's when Viktor found himself on the brink of exposure. The German revealed that in late 1943, he had seen Butyrin in the company of Soviet counterintelligence officers. This fact greatly alarmed the CIA. Unexpected questions appeared in messages to Butyrin. Had he met with the contact who transmitted information to him? The KGB raised the alarm. Then Grigorenko decided to play ahead again. On his recommendation, Butyrin feigned mortal offense at the CIA's distrust. He wrote an emotional message expressing hurt at their suspicion, claiming he had prepared unique information at an ultra-secret facility that would cost him his life, and would only hand it over personally to the resident, not through dead drops. The Americans took the bait. CIA Deputy Resident Frank Smith, the same one who first established contact with Viktor at the cinema, agreed to a personal meeting. In June 1975, a scene was to be played out at a used bookshop. One of the visitors was supposedly to ask for a specific book, at which moment some secret message would be transmitted. But as soon as the volume with the microfilm hidden inside fell into Frank Smith's hands, he was immediately detained by a KGB operational group and soon received orders to leave the USSR within 48 hours. It seemed that Operation Riddle 2 had reached its conclusion. But no. Grigorenko had conceived one more non-trivial move. From time to time, KGB officers informed the public about their work. A lecture was held at the Polytechnic Museum about how other states' intelligence services engaged in illegal activities on Soviet territory. The speaking KGB representative casually mentioned the recent arrest of a Soviet citizen while transmitting classified information to a CIA officer. As a result, the American intelligence officer was expelled from the USSR, and his agent received a lengthy prison sentence. Some representatives of foreign states were invited to this lecture: journalists, students. The sensational information quickly reached CIA residency officers, but if Viktor was behind bars, he couldn't be a KGB agent, and the bookshop failure wasn't his provocation. In reality, he had left Moscow on vacation. This was unknown for verification purposes. Butyrin was temporarily removed from Operation Riddle 2, but the operation itself continued. June 1976. Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev arrives in Paris for a visit. Both sides prepared carefully for the meeting. Delegations of Soviet specialists had arrived in France beforehand, including someone from the Ministry of Railways. CIA officers closely monitored the visit preparations and couldn't believe their luck. By all signs, Kolesnikov was indeed that same relative of Butyrin whom the Germans had recruited during the war. He was the source of the most important intelligence that Viktor had been transmitting to the CIA in recent years. Frank Smith had been expelled from the Soviet Union after his arrest at the bookshop. At one of the receptions, Smith approached Kolesnikov and inquired about his relative's well-being. Later, they met privately. The Soviet official was very displeased. After all, because of his carelessness, his relative had been arrested and sentenced. Kolesnikov indicated his readiness to cooperate with the Americans, but demanded a large sum in foreign currency up front. Smith set a mandatory condition. He had to pass a lie detector test. The American intelligence officers didn't suspect that the role of the high-ranking ministry official was being played by a specially trained State Security Committee officer. General Grigorenko was confident that Buterin's main information source, once abroad, would certainly attract American attention. The general didn't rule out a lie detector test, so the officer was taught special techniques for deceiving the polygraph. Polygraphs never give 100% success guarantee. The conclusions are usually most likely yes or possibly yes, never absolute certainty. With the spread of polygraphs came research into methods of deceiving them, conducted in the KGB as well. The most elementary example: bite your tongue when asked either a correct or incorrect question. This creates specific pain that registers on the polygraph, making it impossible to determine the cause. But you must bite so that it's not visible. They connected him to the polygraph and received results indicating this person was not a KGB agent. Consequently, trust in the information he transmitted increased substantially. Incidentally, whether a real Ministry of Railways official named Kolesnikov existed, or whether he was part of Soviet intelligence legend from the beginning, remains a mystery. But either way, Operation Riddle 2 entered a new phase. Now the pseudo-Kolesnikov was directly supplying disinformation to the CIA. Dnipropetrovsk, Southern Design Bureau. In 1976, after several years of intensive work, designer Vladimir Utkin and his team succeeded in fitting the missile into a standard-length railway car. To do this, they made the nose cone foldable. On launch, a special system would inflate it into a conical shape. Excess missile weight was distributed to two neighboring cars through an ingenious device. There were other innovative technical solutions. For instance, if the missile simply rose straight up, it would destroy the car. So they found a solution where it first rises with a small, weak charge, rotates, and only then does the main powerful engine engage. All of this was automated, simply unique-level developments. Kolesnikov spent 6 more years transmitting false information to American intelligence. In 1983, the KGB decided to conclude Operation Riddle 2. The tasks of protecting Soviet weapons secrets had been fulfilled. But General Grigorenko proposed finishing the operation with an impressive finale. Moscow, May 1983. U.S. Embassy attaché, actually CIA officer Lewis Thomas, discovered a piece of paper in his car salon. It was a message about payment for services. The Americans, through Kolesnikov, confirmed their readiness to pay and provided the location of a dead drop containing the required sum. On June 2, 1983, U.S. Embassy employee Lewis Thomas was arrested while making a drop in one of Moscow's parks. Thomas was taken to a KGB facility. The container held 300,000 rubles, an astronomical sum for those times. This amount suggests how highly the U.S. valued Buterin's information. Considering that a Gaz-24 car cost 9,000 rubles and an apartment cost even less, you can understand that this money could have lasted someone their entire remaining life in complete comfort. The conclusion of Operation Riddle 2 was indeed impressive. Coincidence or not, but shortly after its completion, full-scale testing of train number 0 began, and in 1987, 3 railway missile complexes simultaneously entered combat duty. This came as a complete surprise to the United States. To counter the new weapon type, the Pentagon had to create a powerful satellite surveillance group. The operational game called Operation Riddle continued for more than 40 years in total. The full volume of disinformation successfully transmitted during it won't be known for some time. Just as the further fate of its main character, Victor Butyrin, remains secret. Only in 2010 was his real name declassified. Even today, so many years after the operation's conclusion, it remains largely a true riddle. In the shadows of the Cold War, where truth and deception danced together for decades, Operation Riddle 2 stands as a testament to the art of intelligence warfare. A ghost train that haunted American strategists. A double agent who fooled the CIA for over a decade. A master spy who turned the hunters into the hunted. Sometimes the greatest secrets aren't hidden in classified documents or locked vaults. Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, disguised as ordinary freight trains rolling through the vast expanses of a nation that mastered the art of making the impossible seem routine. The riddle may be solved, but its echoes still reverberate through the corridors of intelligence agencies worldwide. In the end, the greatest magic trick isn't making something disappear. It's making something that was never there appear real enough to fool the most sophisticated adversaries on Earth.